We're basically not gamers. We have a history of playing some games, for sure, and have played this game, and it's been beautiful. But to say we're a gamer would be, would be ridiculous.
Music kind of, whether you like it or not, it triggers certain feelings in you. It triggers, certain, and that's why it's so powerful, and that's why it can be so sneaky also, like, to make you feel stuff that you didn't necessarily want to feel, know, and the music can kind of go, the back door towards manipulating your feelings, and also manipulating your level of excitement, or your your will to take action or move faster, or turn to the right, or so it's a bit of a manipulative medium.
Yeah, and it's also, within the game environment, it's the only thing that tells you that time's about to wrap, really. So it's like, there's also these functional properties where it's, it's ultimately, it's telling you to get a move on. It's a really sort of like, in some ways, it's just pure information as well as being this emotional kind of narrative journey thing. So I don't know, it occupies a really interesting space, I think. Some parts of the process were incredibly heavy. There was a lot of sort of conceptual talk within the sound design department, which is less standard maybe in films, unless you're really lucky and you have a really coherent sort of sound design team and musicians team that want to really fuse together. Most of the time they're fairly distinct, and within the games department, you're really just the audio engine, and so you meet every week for 18 months as the audio engine, the team, and you discuss the entire sort of conceptual sound world that you're trying to build. So that's a really heavy discussion, but heavy also somehow has a bit of a negative tinge to it. I thought it was thrilling the whole way through. So I don't know about you. Like it's a deep discussion, but if what you're interested in is a 1.5 year long discussion about how to create a sound world for a place that doesn't exist, then you want heavy. I would say.
Yeah, I guess you have to be in a bit better conversation, because when the audio, when not just the audio, when everything is interactive, it's not just like, elements standing on their own as they are, they have to be able to, all the elements have to be able to respond to what the player is doing. Obviously there has to be a bit more interactivity also within the different elements of the game, and therefore there has to be kind of more, everyone has to know what the next person is doing a little bit more than perhaps in films, because you can just in the final edit of a film, you can just decide like, okay, now this is like, now the sound design is louder, now the music is louder, so it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a different dialogue, but yeah.
And the thing that you're doing ostensibly doesn't exist up until everyone has completed their work. It's sort of this strange exponential curve of creation where everyone is beginning to create, but nothing exists, and then it all comes together in the last weeks. Whereas in a film, it's got a more standard flow to it, right? So you're, most of the time, unless you're Hildur and lucky enough to get to start working on music miles before the film's been shot, like most people just receive an edit and some semi-completed sound design, and they're just like, okay, I'm working into these parameters, but very much isn't the case with games. So it's somehow more abstract in the process. You've got to do a lot of imagining. Right?
Yeah, because then you also don't know what the player is going to do, right? You don't know how the player is going to interact. Like, there were so in some ways, like, the music doesn't even exist until the player plays that particular game, because it's going to change anyway every single time it's played. So it's there's things that you also have to consider, like, that certain types of sounds are going to make the player interact and, turn around, or, there's like those kind of elements that
yeah, we had a really, I think it's kind of fun to talk about, because we're basically not gamers, like we have a history of playing some games for sure, and have played this game, and it's been beautiful. But to say we're a gamer would be, would be ridiculous. It's like it's not necessarily our area of expertise. So we come at this with sort of wide-eyed enthusiasm, but not necessarily like there was a lot of things to learn through the process. And I think when we're creating sound worlds that are where the line between sound design and music is deliberately so close, you're not really sure what is the world, a sort of Foley sound of the world, and what is the music beginning to sort of creep to life. You encounter problems occasionally where a musical element that we're like, oh, but it's so cool because it fits into the world so well. The player goes, okay, so why am I hearing this sound in my left ear? Like, what is that? Is that someone doing something to my left? I should check over here. And the music influences the play in a way that's not desirable. It's never a problem you encounter in film, because the screen doesn't move. So there was lots of that process of sort of teasing and testing, and a couple of sounds that we literally had to make less literal. We had to sort of bring back from the sort of slightly bring more into a more musical context than perhaps the original idea was, just because the player was interacting with the sound as though it was sound effects rather than the music itself. So that was pretty fun. There are definitely more direct routes to getting a score than the way that we went about it. I think we were really, and the team at DICE also really encouraged that. They were just like, we in their words, they sort of hired us to do so that they wouldn't get a traditional game score, and there's some vulnerability in that, like, because obviously, if you slap like big kicks and a chugging orchestra on top of something, it's gonna do the thing. It's gonna do the thing. But they were like, they didn't want to play it safe, and so we went a really indirect way of coming round to what ultimately ended up in the game, and
which was very much kind of fueled with exploration rather than like knowing necessarily, so
real curiosity.
Yeah, exactly, which is because I think that's kind of, and that's what they were interested in, like, because our lack of experience meant that we were seeing everything with so fresh eyes, and therefore, like, we would go probably in different directions than someone who is like knows exactly how the ropes were,
For us, the thing that was exciting about the project was actually the worlds themselves. So it's kind of we knew that people were going to be running around shooting each other, and that has action in it. There's action and excitement, and there's all this going on. But it wasn't that necessarily attracted us to the project itself. It was these like colossal worlds in this post sort of like, mid climate collapse kind of near future, and so there's a sort of tension between the fact that for us that we were really trying to do world building. We're like trying to make the music a part of the worlds themselves, like really use the materials from each of the levels and really bring the whole world to life, so that as a player you're kind of engulfed in the real kind of physicality of the world. You've got the visual elements, the sound design, the music, and it's all pulling over you in this kind of chaotic and intense kind of way. And you've got that tension because you need to drive the player forward. You know, you can't abandon the player musically and just be dealing with the world itself. But at the same time, we're not just focusing on the player. Like we're really wanting to look at the world and dwarf the player. So it's, you know what I mean? There's a kind of tension between these two things. And I remember like halfway through the process, we delivered some, you know, for the end of a level, we delivered some music that was perhaps a touch more melancholic than, and that's by our standards, I think it's pretty melancholic what's in there anyway, but you know, this pretty sad piece of music for the end of a round. And the audio team came back and they were like, well, in this case, you've kind of abandoned the player, because the player needs to feel pumped, win or lose. They need to feel pumped at the end of a round. And we were like, but they've just died in a climate, like, you know, it's this awful world, and they've just died. And you know, Andreas, the head of the sound team, came back and he's like, you got to remember that in the game itself, dying is of relatively little consequence. It's not like a film where if the main character dies in a film, you know, it's a moment. In a game, it doesn't really have much weight.
You're back in 5 seconds.
You're just back. You know, you're back again. Or if you're us, you know, we die all the time playing this game. It's worth saying. And like we're just like dead. But it's of very little consequence. So you get this kind of interesting tension between wanting to build the world without abandoning the player, and also avoiding focusing too much on the player and abandoning the world itself. You know, there's a real balance there, and it's quite interesting, I think.